So this was back before medicine was like, the big thing that it is now. Nowadays, it's like everywhere you look, there's like somebody offering, held spaces. But back then it was a Grateful Dead show and mushrooms.
Okay.
And because I know a lot of people who are doing a lot of medicine, and yes, they're different people, but they're still swirling in their stuff. They're still just like you each semester, but more and more we're focusing on love, relationships, intimacy, sacred sexuality, and embodying our truest purpose. Because a lot of guys' essence is a slight more blend. And if they live into their accurate version of themselves.
Yes, this is true. I said, well, okay, good. So we actually could have a base, this know that we can build on that. Because I said to her, because I understand that this is my experience.
If you are new to this podcast, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. If you would like to support this podcast, please check out our merch store on Amazon with the brand Todd and Me. We've got some cool t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, and sweaters. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And if you're now starting a spiritual journey, you would like to start a spiritual journey, or you're currently on a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, please hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 and it will help you to get some magic mushrooms. Enjoy the show and stay tuned, because we have some more great content coming soon. Hello friends, and welcome back to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. I am your host Todd Cave, and today we have a really interesting conversation for you. We're going to talk about something called the Awakened Brotherhood. We're going to talk about living through the heart and balancing the masculine and feminine energies. And I have a brand new guest for you. His name is Tobin Zivon, and he is a spiritual teacher, therapist, Tantra Master and Coach, who has devoted over 30 years to helping individuals and couples achieve true transformation in their relationships. He is the author of The Art of Mindful Living and the upcoming book called Allies in Awakening, Living the Truth of Unconditional Love in Intimate Relationships. He has empowered thousands to break free from stuck patterns and painful dynamics, guiding them through a life of authentic liberation and deeper relationship satisfaction. Like I said, this is a really interesting conversation because Tobin and I align on many things, but they're just some very small nuances that we don't. But we say most of the same things, just in a slightly different way. And I really like this conversation because a lot of men today, we feel like we don't really have a place where it is for us, because due to history where the divine feminine and females have been sort of like oppressed and put down a lot through history because of what happened with the Anuna gods, etc. We find that the divine feminine is now coming back, but the thing is that the divine feminine is actually in all of us, both males and females. And Tobin eloquently describes how there's a safe space for men to be vulnerable and also to live through the heart, which is one of the things that is very difficult for us men to do. And things like having empathy is a challenge for us because we're very left brain thinking and logical and very about structure and order and control and that kind of stuff. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy this conversation, because I surely did, and it will thought-provoke you, I am sure of that.
When truth is blurred by lies and misinformation, perception becomes reality. What will you perceive your reality to be?
Liberate your fears and walk with me.
Sit down and meditate. Connect with your soul.
Be a monster, and then learn how to control it.
You gotta be willing to do the work.
So it really goes really deep in terms of words and etymology and what they mean. So this is why it is really hard to really crack the matrix because there's so many levels and layers to it, you know?
Tobin, welcome to the Conscious Man 7. I'm really excited to talk to you. How are you today, my friend?
Thank you, Todd. I'm feeling great. I'm stoked to be here with you, man. I really love what you're up to and love your energy, and I love hearing my bio and your English accent. It just brings out a whole other dimension to it that I've never really taken in before. It's really cool.
Yeah, man. Thanks, man. And I'm also very very excited to talk to you because, like I was saying before we started to roll, what you're doing is quite interesting because there are a lot of spaces in the world today for women to go and get help and support and stuff, but there are not really a lot of places for men. And because of that, I was very interested to talk to you to find out more about what you do, how you do it, and stuff like, because from living in the UK for many years, I have seen over there firsthand that there's just no support for men, and men have to do a lot of outrageous things in order to just get a spotlight onto them in terms of like how the legal system punishes them, stuff like for trying to be good fathers, good husbands, etc. But they just get punished.
Yeah.
That can really break men. And there's a group in England called Fathers for Justice who are claiming like high rise buildings so that they would get some attention on them, so that they can get a platform to raise certain issues. So what you're doing, I think, is pretty good. That there's a space for men and stuff. So before we get into the full of it, can you tell the audience a little bit more about yourself and what led you to do the work that you do today?
Yeah, well, when it comes to these men's groups and the men's work, really, it's cool to think back because one of the main inspirations, one of the main catalysts for it was all the women in my world were saying it was resounding, so many, like I can't even remember. It was at least 5-7 women were just like, Tobin, you've got to teach the men. You've got to teach the men what you do and how you do it. And like the world needs that. So one of the main catalysts was the women who were on these evolving paths and who were teachers in their own rights. And, they were just friends and allies and colleagues all saying, Tobin, it's like, you're made for this. Get a men's group going. And then with enough of the other men in my world who were like, we need it. And I had been in men's groups for 20 plus years myself. And it had been such an invaluable part of my journey that at some point it was just like, kind of like a no brainer. Let's pay it forward. Let's make a group. Let's make it the best it can be, the most supportive, the best training we can impart to these guys, the best support system, like all of it. We wanted to put it all in one place. So that's what we kind of like set out to do. I think it was about 6 years ago now that we started the Awakened Brotherhood. So that's just been a big part of my journey in these last number of years, is this focus on this men's work and supporting men around the world. And like you're saying, there's little pockets of places where men do get support, but the rest of the planet in general, it is like, it's a foreign concept. I met some people on the beach the other day telling them what I do, and they're like, what is that? Like, they didn't even know what men's work was. And this was a man and his wife, and I think they were from Germany, and they had no clue what men's work even was. And so I'm just saying all this to agree with what you're saying, is like, it's what the men need. I do also think it's what the world most needs. In a lot of ways, if we can up-level the men, we can up-level the planet, because, it does tend to be like this. Obviously we all need support. We all need help. It's like, let's all evolve. Let's all grow. Let's all transform in the best and most deep, true ways we possibly can. But when it comes to working with men, you get a ripple effect into families, into work environments, into parenting in a way that is just like creating night and day kind of shifts for all the people that I'm aware of. It's like being on the front lines of miracles. I just love it so much for that reason.
I agree with everything you said, because one of the things that I say, which for some people is quite controversial, and I say that men are the actual backbone of the society, because the roles that men perform, um, women can't perform. Women are as important as men for a family structure, but men do more
That's for
difficult
sure.
jobs. Men do more difficult jobs. Men put their lives on the line more to provide. Men are the ones that work on oil rigs, work on ships. Men are the ones that work in tunnels. Men are the ones that clean windows in high skyscrapers and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
and without strong, quality, good men, the society tends to disintegrate. So before we go on a little bit more about that, what were some of the things that happened to you? Because everybody that I talk to, there's always a moment or a series of moments or events that happened that led them to do what they do. So what was that moment or moments that basically pushed you down this path? Because most likely it's not something you wanted to do.
Great question. Great question. Yeah. So for me, it was actually a massive wake up call. Luckily, I had this early on in my life. I was probably 19 or 20, and I did a medicine journey, and at the same time, I was practicing Zen really deeply, and it just hit me like a brick wall that if I didn't do something really sincere, really deep, I was going to end up like my dad and my uncles and these guys in my family lineage that I looked at and I just thought, wow, that's like a fate worse than death to me, to be, the way my dad was to me, just checked out, borderline abusive, just an alcoholic, just, not showing up in the ways that my heart knew was possible. And it hit me like a brick wall that if I didn't do deep, sincere, good work, there was some force inside me and inside life and inside the momentum of the society and the whole path I was on, that if I didn't take my life in my own hands and make a really big, deep, sincere shift, I was going to just somehow like flow into this half life. And even if I would have never ended up, as bad as my dad, I could feel some force underneath was just had me. It was like an undertow, an undercurrent. And it was like my conditioning, it had gotten in me. And I was going to end up just like marrying the first person I fell in love with and, getting into some job just for the money and just like doing all the things that guys did back then. And I was like, no, I'll do anything but that. And it just became it became like a pivot point of my life. And then from that point on, I sought out whatever mentors, teachers, work. I made decisions that were based in like following my heart and service and evolution from that point on. And it was a real big wake up call for me, just like this, like, oh my God, somehow I just felt it in my DNA or in some version of my conditioning. Like if I don't really seek out good support and commit myself to it, I'm going to fall into some weird eddy of life that I'm going to regret on my deathbed. And that woke me up like nothing else could.
So out of curiosity, which medicine was it that you took?
So this was back before medicine was like, the big thing that it is now. Nowadays, it's like everywhere you look, there's like somebody offering, held spaces. But back then it was a Grateful Dead show and mushrooms.
Okay.
and just the right amount and just the right night and just the right book that I had just read. I had read a book that, where a guy like was shown his life. He was like basically shown what his life would be if he didn't pay attention. And he went through this whole like hypnotic process. And I really identified with the character in that book. And I had just been reading that book that day. Then I took that medicine and I danced my ass off for like 6 hours straight. And then I was laying there and this epiphany occurred. And it really was a pivot point in my whole journey.
I say all the time that if about at least 51% of the planet were to take medicine in some form or fashion, we would have a completely different world. Because I tell people all the time that especially if you take something as powerful as ayahuasca, it is very, very unlikely that you will be the exact same type of a person that you were prior to taking.
Yeah.
Very unlikely. It is very unlikely. Is it possible? Yeah, but unlikely.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it a few times, and I agree. This medicine is a great tool. And the other thing I want to say here, I want to put a really strong pitch for the after medicine phase of the journey. Like, it's not just the medicine, it's the integration and it's the follow through. I often say a true life miracle is a 2-part process. The first part is a breakthrough, and the second part is a follow through. So you need the breakthrough and the follow through to get a real miracle in somebody's life. Because I know a lot of people who are doing a lot of medicine, and yes, they're different people, but they're still swirling in their stuff. They're still just like you get behind the scenes on their lives and their relationships, and there's a lot of mayhem and a lot of mess and a lot of just like confusion and lack of like depth and integration and empowerment and solidity that then like shows up in the way that they exist over time. So that follow through is very, very key for most people in most cases. And that's actually one of the main things we do provide in the Awakened Brotherhood is that integration, that follow through, that support system, that like deep, integral, ongoing, like how am I going to live this knowing that I have, because there are a lot of people are having these big epiphanies or awakenings through medicine work or through a meeting with a kind of awake being like a guru or a teacher of some kind, or you name it. People are kind of popping left and right like popcorn these days, like, oh wait, kind of that epiphany I just described is happening a lot for people these days. And what I needed, I know in my own journey, and what most people I know and what most men I know really, really, really want is that ongoing camaraderie and personalized, custom tailored support and like training and teachings and practices that you can do on a daily basis that kind of like infiltrate your whole existence, your whole embodiment, and the way you show up, the way you live, the way you love, the way you relate, the way you make choices, and all of that. So to me, that's like that integrated existence that we really want to help guys live into over time.
Okay. So you've mentioned the Awakened Brotherhood quite a few times. So let's dive into that. Can you tell us when it was formed, what it is exactly, and what kind of support you offer that, because you speak so highly of it. So if you were to, someone that's completely clueless, how can the Awakened Brotherhood help them and help humanity and stuff like that?
Nice. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I'm on fire for it, obviously, because I've just been, blown away by the results of it. We've been doing it about 6 years. Like I said, I began it at the promptings of a bunch of women in my world. And then one guy in particular who I was working with, one of my mentees, I was mentoring him, doing sessions with him. And I was like, you just need a men's group, man. Like, we got everything else going, but we need a men's group for you. So I was like, let's start it together. So he and I just started this thing together. We just put it out, got whatever it was, 15 guys. And it was like across the board, a resounding success. And we tried to design it so it could be an online forum. This was, pre-pandemic, but coming up on it. And we created this online forum, and our goal was to create as much true connection, true camaraderie, and true support in an online format that could possibly exist. So we've come up with this kind of like combination of things. Of course, the primary thing is what we call our dojo calls, where we all get there together and we get on Zoom and we do embodiment practices and teachings and trainings and do a lot of Q&A and,
Hello, folks. So we just had a bit of a temporary crash of Zoom. So now we're back and we're going to pick right back at where we left off. And Tobin was telling us about the Awakened Brotherhood. So take it away. The last thing you were talking about is that you were 15 guys. That's the last thing I heard.
Right. So we just decided let's create this group. And I really, I'd been getting all these prompts from women, and then my soul bro, one of my favorite guys in the world who I was mentoring at the time. I'm like, you need a men's group. Let's create one. He's like, yes. So that's how it all began. And the whole idea behind it from that point was, let's create something. And then even though it's online, let's do it in a way that creates as much camaraderie, as much support, as much true training, the kind of thing where you would, you almost forget that it's online because you feel so connected to the guys and you get so much support and you feel so good about everything that is imparted from this group. So that's what we set out to do from the get-go. And that's what I feel like we've accomplished, and in a really amazing way. And now since then, I think, like I said, it's been 6 years, probably averaging two cohorts a year, 2 semesters a year. And we go for about 3 months at a time and we dive in deep. And usually it's, somewhere between 15 and 20 guys. And we create this support system and this training system and this mentorship program that is really, really designed to meet guys where they're at and create a camaraderie system that uplifts their lives in the best way possible within that amount of time. And so far, I really say this with all sincerity, it feels like almost every single guy who's been a part of this feels that wow, we get these testimonial calls, or just these gratitude calls on the regular, this really blew my mind, changed my life. Thank you so much. And now there's this web of guys that kind of continue on in the Awakened Brotherhood, and we keep the support and connection going over time, and it just deepens and builds as we go. Okay. So that's the general broad view. And then the specific things, it can be different with each semester, but more and more we're focusing on love, relationships, intimacy, sacred sexuality, and embodying our truest purpose. So we feel like focusing on that what is your truest way of inhabiting yourself in the most skillful way as a man, in love and in work. So all of our trainings and teachings are designed to catalyze guys in the direction of really knowing how to be we call it Jedis of life and love. We use this metaphor of the Jedi, or a ninja or a black belt. We kind of think of our path as an embodied man, as a black belt, like a living art, that we're aspiring black belts. And over time, we're in the dojo of life and love, and we're becoming more and more masterful as we go. And so all the teachings and trainings and support at this point are really custom designed for that. And then, of course, conversely, we do a lot of deep work on the shadow, on our imprints, on our traumas, and how to heal from the depth of our psyche, the roots of where our blocks and barriers and stuck patterns originate from.
Okay.
A lot of work on shame. We focus a lot on shame and fears and limitations and stuck patterns as a way to really liberate ourselves into that higher purpose, into that higher way of existing, into that higher way of loving and leaving a wake of love as men on this planet.
And in your courses are is medicine included in it as well, or a part of it?
No, we don't do medicine per se. Both my other co-leaders are medicine men. They do facilitate, medicine journeys, especially in the Wachuma, San Pedro lineage. So, a lot of guys are doing medicine, and there's guys, many of the guys who come to us are medicine leaders. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon that a lot of the guys in our groups have their own groups where they're leading with medicine, but they're doing the work here to get that, that support system and that camaraderie and do their shadow work in the everyday, because I do feel I have a real sincere belief that at least 99%, if not more, of humanity needs not just the medicine. We need the embodiment. We need the camaraderie of other humans. We need to know how to work with our shadows and our integration process and all that goes along with that to really mature and really ripen and really become wise, embodied, just like the most alive, whole version of ourselves. It kind of needs this 1-2 balancing act of like real catalyzation. People get that on retreats, or they get that in medicine work, or they get that on vision quests, or, there's so many modalities out there these days that give us these big shifts and, cataclysmic experiences of popping into, divinity or clarity or vision or truth. And in some ways, good medicine work, like especially with ayahuasca, it can get to the roots of our psyche and our psychology and our wounding. And even then, I have seen this invaluable addendum that comes with knowing how to do that work when you're not on the medicine and ground it in your existence. And then something about that camaraderie system and actually being around a tribe of men, like there's something in our souls and our psyches and our hearts that thrives in the field of connection, of human connection.
I do agree, because I find that men, we tend to need other men of like mind around us, because iron sharpens iron. Mm-hmm. And if you have, if you're hanging with successful people, men that are crushing in their field, men that, have a certain amount of status or influence in their community, where they're helping, touching, moving, and inspiring people to become better versions of themselves, we men thrive on that, right? And I do 100%. also agree that the medicine is just one half of it. It's actually a small half. When I say small, because it's only 1 night, 2 nights that you may do it and you see. Mm-hmm. But the thing is now is the integration and the doing, because while I said that it is unlikely that it will be exactly the same, that is true. But what happens is that if you don't implement what you're shown from the medicine, your life will still continue to stagnate, right? And
yeah, exactly.
People shouldn't necessarily look at the medicine as the all and be all. It is a tool. And what you do is that the things that you're shown and told, then you implement. Because if you don't, you're still going to have the same breakdowns, the same patterns, the same self-sabotage traits and suffering and stuff. So,
same addictive patterns. Yeah, exactly, man. You're saying it so beautifully. That's it. And it's such a powerful, miraculous tool that's being given to us. And there's just something else that for most people, this counterpoint to the medicine is that embodied part. It is the integration part. It is the support part. It is the connection part. It is the subtle work on certain inception points of our conditioning and our imprints that, in some ways, what I've seen is without a really, really masterful guide helping you in the human, that stuff can really keep asserting its power over your existence, over your relationships, over your, the way you're showing up, just different addiction patterns or fear patterns. Those things have a power in the depth of our psyche that we want to get to the roots of. True. We can live that epiphany. We can exist in those in those states that we tasted in the medicine. That's what it's all about, really, in my experience.
Yeah, I agree. So your coaching and teaching is mostly tailored for men. So how do you define the role of a man and masculinity in our society?
A good question. And just to be clear, it's wild because I do put myself out mostly as a men's coach and also a couples whisperer. People call me a couples whisperer because I have this magic ability to help couples in a way that most people on the planet just can't. People will come to me after like working with all sorts of therapists or, some of the best around, and then I can help them have these shifts in their relationship. So those are the two things I mostly focus on. But I do end up in working almost like a third with men, a third with couples, and a third with women because of just the way it all organically works out. So I feel like we all are here to do our work. We're all trying to like take this leap, this quantum leap into a new way of existing here as men, as women, as human beings on this planet, in this realm, and we're really at this like crux point in history. It's really a powerful, vital, crazy, challenging, and profoundly like there's a profound opportunity during this time too. It's all of that and more right now that we're living through. So to answer your question, I really do in some ways, as much as I focus definitely on men, on women, I'm always focusing on the personal, like very, very custom tailored with whoever's in front of me, because we're all so unique. We all are so unique. So I don't really go for this like one size fits all for all men, like David Data, he was the main guy I learned from back in the day. It was like men are this, women are that. Men need to do this, women need to do that. Da 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 da. And it was kind of like a beacon call that really inspired all of us at the time. And over time, and being immersed and on the front lines and behind the scenes and in the depths of people's actual hearts and souls, I see that it is so much more unique and custom tailored and personalized for each and every one of us than just say, you need to be like fill in the blank. So it really gets nuanced as you go. But there are obviously some things I can say across the board, like for every man I've ever known, there's a flame in his heart to truly show up in a certain way that comes along with, I want to love well, and I want to show up in a way that like my truest self gets to be in the driver's seat, that I've overcome the power of all this conditioning that has me kind of spinning in loops. I want to be beyond that, living in a kind of existence that feels true, that feels aligned with what I feel is my essence self, instead of all this weird conditioning that I got growing up. And so that's what we're mostly about, is just helping every human being. But in the part of my work where I'm focusing on working with men, it's like, how do you personally, like just as you, live into that version of you that you're here to live? And how do you overcome those very personal and unique barriers that are keeping you kind of stuck in old patterns and old loops?
So what are your thoughts then that because the society that we have now is as a direct result of the emasculation. Yes.
Emasculation.
I just had a brain freeze. Emasculation
yes.
of men. So what are your thoughts where there seems to be a real clear correlation of the emasculation of men and the society going down at the same time? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So again, like you can look at that. To me, that's a subset of what I was just saying. They go together. They're one and the same. But what you're saying to me is a subset of this larger context of like, you as a being, you as a personal being, how do you come into your power, as opposed to all men have been emasculated and they need to come more into their masculine power. That's not true for all men. In fact, a lot of men are in their masculine power, but they're almost over masculine, like overly embodying this like hyper masculine thing. And that's an epidemic on the planet too.
So
in fact, if you really...
when you say hypermasculine, what do you mean by that exactly?
I mean a kind of like hard and guarded type of masculine, like the guys. If you go to Middle America, go to most of the American culture, and you scratch behind the surface. Here in Maui, most places I've ever been, there's this dude archetype. Mm-hmm. And even the emasculated men, you scratch behind the surface of relationships. I'm on the front lines with a lot of relationships, and a lot of the ways I'm introduced to men is because their partners, their feminine partner, is showing up saying, "Please help my man," And the main complaint they have is that man is kind of checked out. He's not very present. He's hard in his heart. He's defended. He's, working really hard, focusing on bringing home the money, but he's not in his heart. He's not actually in his feminine in a way that the women are hungry for. They want to feel empathic attunement. They want to feel sensitivity. They want to feel care. They want to feel presence. They don't just want, some alpha dude 99% of the time.
The funny thing with that is that what women say and what women are attracted to are two different things, because women would say they want something, because I find that women tend to communicate how they feel, but not actually what they really want. And what women are attracted to is different from what they say they want.
I know what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying, but there's two distinct phases of what women want. Okay. So what women are attracted to is not actually what they want. So let's get this really clear. There's phases. So again, like I'm like many, many, many years, and I've studied this like in nuance along the lines of what you're talking about. And again, go deep, go thorough, go really into the depth of what women actually want, not what they're saying they want, and what men actually want too, what humans actually want. And you're going to find that, yes, women say they want something, but their animal instinct is attracted to that alpha man. That's true. That's kind of the attraction DNA in a feminine psyche. But past the attraction phase, which is where any fulfilling relationship is going to occur, those alpha guys are often showing up with guarded hearts, with lack of empathy, with lack of mastery, with lack of artfulness. And not that they need less of their empowered masculine, but most of those guys do need to heal the traumas that keep them from being touchable on the level of their heart. And women do want, even if they don't know it, because mostly they're saying, I want him to be present. That's the most strong complaint of women who are past the attraction phase in longer term relationship. He's just not present. He's just not showing up in the way, he's just out. He's just like not here. He's not prioritizing the relationship. He's just gone somewhere. And so that isn't actually the correct translation of what they're hungry for. If you really get down to it, what the feminine heart is hungry for is not just presence. It's an embodied, heartful, empowered presence. It's like a blend of qualities that is rare on the planet. And most men, whether they're emasculated or hypermasculine in their conditioned body, the reason that's happening, either side of that conditioning coin, is happening because of traumas in that man's childhood where it wasn't okay to be truly healthily vulnerable and in their power at the same time. We've been that's the epidemic on this planet, is we've been conditioned as men, because of the pain in our little tender hearts that we had as boys, to either collapse and be good boys or guard and protect and be like cool guys. Those cool guys are more attractive to the women in the beginning, but they're either way, you have a distortion in the fully alive, fully wholeness version of that man in his wholeness. Once he's healed that conditioning and come into his true self, there's going to be a very paradoxical blend of masculine and feminine, of empathic and empowered, of caring and on his path and prioritizing his purpose in a non-collapsible way. That to me is like what I'm wanting to help each and every man live into, is that true, healthy, sweet spot that is accurate for him. And it's slightly unique for each man that I have ever met.
I agree. And I think that it's a very delicate situation, because one of the things that I have realized, and this is talking from men and also in my personal experience, is that women say that they want a man that is vulnerable and stuff. But the problem is that when a man is actually vulnerable, the woman tends to lose attraction for that man because of the innate wiring in her that is looking for that protector, strong type of character. So I do agree with everything you're saying. And what I would say is that I think that a man has to be very careful who he chooses to show that side to, because not every woman is worthy of that. Because what tends to happen is that when you have an argument, what tends to happen is that the women throw that in the man's face, which makes it even worse. So he will not open up ever again. So I think that's the vicious circle.
That's the vicious circle that I'm trying to help people out of. So unhealthy women and unhealthy men, that's the dynamic, and you're describing it well. But it's not the vulnerability that tends to have them losing attraction. It's a collapsed source. It's a place where they're not in their own source, such that their vulnerability is now, it's not just those vulnerable moments that make a woman not attracted to a man, ever. In fact, if a man hits the right notes with his vulnerability, letting himself be boyish, soft, tender, when I'm sick, I'm like a teddy bear, please bring me some soup, whatever it is. If he hits those notes correctly in the orchestra of his being, he's also hitting this note of, I've got myself. I'm sourced and sourced. I'm not sourcing on the woman. So a lot of vulnerable men, they collapse, and their wounding is such that they get codependent with their woman and they become hyper dependent on that woman. That is where the traction starts to get, it's like kills the magnets. It kills that dynamic, but not the vulnerability. People equate it with the vulnerability. But the most empowered men I know are also some of the most vulnerable.
But I still think it depends on the right woman, because
the right woman, that kind of man, say a man who's really sourced in wholeness, he's not going to put up with the unhealthy version of a woman for very long.
Absolutely.
So that's part of the magnetic quality of where we're at, is what we're going to attract, so this gets so nuanced and so, multifaceted. This gets very, very deep, this conversation. We could do podcast after podcast. And we do get into this in our training, because it's like such a nuanced training. Like, how do you hit those black belt notes? And how do you do it in an authentic way, not just a fake way? Not just like, okay, now I need to be some perfect combination of masculine and in my power, and then vulnerable here and there, but only with the right women, and like trying to like figure it out with your brain and do it. That's not even going to hit the right notes, even if you do it perfectly. So we're talking about embodying it authentically. How do you heal yourself into that and live yourself into that natural way of existing that is the truly, essentially whole version of you as a man, where you're sourced and sourced. That obviously for most men is going to look very present, very empowered, very connected to purpose, very connected to masculine qualities of empowerment and leadership and such. So that will be true for most men who come into their wholeness, who live into their essence self. And yet at the same time, if you're really, really, really living from your essence self, that true whole man is also going to be informed so deeply by an intimate, subtle place in his heart that looks and feels more feminine, so that he has the capacity to attune and empathize and feel into the room in a way that most men have no clue what that is. And that type of capacity is where, that's where the feminine gets to really relax and really open and really melt and really start to dance in an uplifting love loop that most people never get to exist in. So it's very nuanced stuff that you're talking about here. We got to be very careful of throwing out these kind of global, like, vulnerability makes women not attractive. Like, so many pickup coaches and dating, gurus and polarity teachers are throwing this shit out left and right. It's dangerous, man. It's not accurate in the reality of living into an artful, loving, fulfilling, satisfying life that gets in a loop of goodness over time. It works to a degree, but when you have the eyes to see it, where the real like marrow of healthy loving and living comes from, there's a next level where it's like this paradoxical blend. And yes, the main thing that exudes from a man like that, most often, if his true essence is masculine, will be these qualities of badassery, empowerment, leadership, masculinity. You feel that in most men, but not every guy, because a lot of guys' essence is a slight more blend. And if they live into their accurate version of themselves, they're gonna start hitting these sweet spots, and then they can attract a partner who is a match for them. And that's where that magic can occur. And it's unique for all of us.
What you're saying, it sounds like a very much of a amalgamation of ideas, because I share a lot of the ideas that the pickup coaches have, but at the same time, I still share a lot of the ideas that you talk about, where the man is more empathetic and he is a bit more, I don't really want to say vulnerable, but he can use the feminine energy to decipher, is this a situation? Or let me phrase that, he's more balanced so that every situation can cause for either which type of energy you're going to use. Because some situations will determine that you have to be full masculine energy. And then other times where the feminine side of you, where you'll be like, okay, have a bit of compassion, a bit of kindness, a bit of heart, a bit of empathy here. That is the energy that's required for the situation. So what it sounds like is that you are trying to achieve the balance, which is what I tend to talk about, but I don't elaborate it as well as you do. But what I do is I say to guys that the main thing is that you have to, one, have boundaries. So just like you rightly said, a man that is in his real masculine is not going to put up with certain types of behaviors from women. And your responsibility is that when you put down the line and say you're not accepting certain behaviors, then you leave that situation, because then now if you stay, you're going to look even more vulnerable and weak and from a side where it's like you have no credibility. But when you are true to your word and yourself, you actually get more credibility from the person and then other women that you would meet in your life, because they know, okay, this guy has the elements of the badassery part, but he also is kind, compassionate, has empathy. So it's like, if you try to take advantage of that, then the other side will come and then you'll be like, okay, well, you've got to go, So I tend to try to walk in the middle where you have both, and you use, depending on the situation, we determine that what energy would be present at that time. Because in a situation where it's protection, well, the full masculine, protective, strong, controlling energy will have to be there to protect your family. And then if it's like your son had an accident, then you have to have that compassion side where the son feels like, okay, well, daddy's here. He, I feel safe, even though I broke my hand or broke my foot and that kind of stuff. So that's how I see it.
Comes into the driver's seat. Yeah, I'm with you. I think we're talking similarly, and there's a difference. There's a little difference and a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
But we're talking about a path of mastery. This really is a path of embodied mastery. And so at a certain point, yes, all of these tools and techniques and teachings and concepts are very, very helpful to try on, to experiment with, to play with. And then the nuance comes in, okay, what are the results of that? Where's that coming from? What's the nuanced, really, really, really underbelly of it all, where all of a sudden at some point in that journey, the concepts go away and something else starts to take over. And it is based in oneness. It's actually based no longer in, you don't even think of masculine, feminine. You're just like a man. You're just a human soul who's responding and showing up. And it just tends to look and like really masterful and really attuned. And yes, oftentimes really masculine, sometimes really sweet and sensitive like that. That's a great example of having your child hurt. And like in that moment, if you're just Mr. Masculine guy, because you trained with, whatever polarity teacher, and you're always holding the masculine polarity and the masculine banks because the rivers of feminine need to know where your banks are at all times, and you're just hard and hard and hard. That little kid is missing out on what he needs from his dad in that moment, which is love, which is sweetness, which is care, which is like, I got you, buddy. Like, get over here, And our women need that too, a lot of times. In a way, in a certain way. Now, again, there's a sweet spot where that's coming from a ground that is based in a version of, that's why we call it the Awakened Brotherhood, because ultimately this path, this level of mastery, the embodied way of existing, is a spiritual experience at some point. Something happens on the level of your soul where you're no longer in like polarity land. You are, because you can't get out of polarity land. And yet something else starts to emerge where it's a dance. It's like the best tango dancers are really good embodiments of this. They are like leads. They're in their power. They're upright. They're, it's a perfect example of what it is to be a masculine being. And yet, if you get into the nuance of a truly black belt version of a tango dancer, his whole lead is based on a listening that's coming from his inner feminine, that's touching into the person he's dancing with and the entire dance floor and the entire world around him at the exact same time as where he's being informed by, and his impulses to lead are coming from soul, from heart. They're informed by heart and soul. And that's why the women around them are like, oh my God, that's the ultimate. That's the ultimate.
So talking about that, let's have a little bit of nuance in terms of that. So what are your thoughts? Because in the manosphere, they tend to say that basically once men work on themselves, then they end up attracting the women that would be the complement to them, because it's based on the energy that they have. So, and when you take that to the other level, they're saying that when men lead well, women will follow the lead, right? So, because the reason why I say that is that where I think it is that the issues that we have in the world today are because of men and the lack of true masculinity. Now, what are your thoughts then that if we can help the men, by default, we end up help the families and help the women, because the women, let's be honest, women's default is not to be a leader. That's the man, right? But
in general, we got to be careful when we speak these ways, but yeah, in general.
But no, because men and women have different roles. And if you look at gender roles, right, both sexes do their gender roles very well. The other one is not as good as the other one of what they can do because they have different strengths and they have different talents, right? So
in general, yeah.
So what are your thoughts then that if the men can pull their socks up, then we can end up changing the society because we would have better families, better wives, better children. What are your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do we define pull your socks up? That's the key question, the billion dollar question. And I have my own definition, because yes, if we're going to tell every guy, pull your socks up, then you'll have a better life and we'll have a better world, then we better know how to define pull your socks up really precisely and really skillfully.
I can explain that then. So
okay.
For me, a man pulling him socks up is one, taking responsibility. Because one of the big issues we have in the world is that men don't take responsibility. And when men start taking responsibility, then they realize that their actions and their words have consequences. So there now it becomes mastery of self to understand that having the right actions and then also saying the right words will create the outcomes that you want because you're balanced. The other thing now is that you protect and provide for the family, because that's another area that men lack in, right? So when you do those things, then you would find that women would tend to be a lot more feminine because the man is providing the environment where she can actually feel safe to be in her full feminine, right? Then the children now would end up having a lot more respect for the dad because the children are observing how he is treating their mother and taking responsibility for the house, right? So these are some of the nuances then that I would say that men need to work on themselves. So maybe pulling them socks up is probably a bit of a poor phrase, but working on themselves is probably a better way.
Yeah.
But I think it's to take responsibility because we've been conditioned to not take responsibility.
Yeah. So we call that integrity, and that's one of our main pillars that we focus on is cultivating and living from integrity, like deep embodied integrity. So living according to your word, showing up, yes, knowing your responsibilities and prioritizing them, knowing how to show up for the challenges in life. So that's one of the key pillars of what we help guys live into. One of the keys. Now, what we do counterbalancingly to that is help not only just go. Like that's a good start for most men on the planet. Come on, guys, get in the game, show the fuck up, do your job, show up, have integrity and show up as a dad, a partner, a coworker, a friend. That's just gets us in the game. But it's not really going to get us to that place that I was describing before, that we're in the marrow, the heart and guts and soul of each and every man is not only going to feel like he's showing up, but he's going to feel fulfilled in showing up. He's going to feel stoked about showing up. His life is going to start to get enhanced because of the ways he's showing up. His love is going to start feeling better. Now that's going to require some other counterbalancingly important ingredients, like knowing how to be vulnerable in the right ways and places so that you can heal those wounds that created all the weird stuff that you got going on. Because if you really look to the underbelly of every guy's being, the reason they're not showing up, the reason they're stuck, the reason they're not doing all those things you just said is because they were conditioned and hurt from some stage in their life. You know, most times their dad was some either emasculated or hypermasculine man who just put some crap on him and he's hurt. So he just, he collapsed down. And then he took the easy way out. Now I just don't have to be integrous. Now I don't have to show up. I'm just going to stay in my addiction, stay in my pattern, stay in my fuck you, be selfish, you know? So getting to the underbelly of that, such that that little tender place in the man's heart feels healed, feels held, feels cared for, feels alchemized. That's another one of the keys. There's a bunch of keys. I mean, we could just go with that, like pull your socks up, but what does that actually mean? Then we could just come up with a bunch of pillars or practices or ingredients to the recipe of actually doing that well, actually doing that in a way that creates truly satisfying results, not only for the man himself, but for the world around him.
Yeah.
So that's what it's all about, man. I'm 100% with you. It's just that it gets again, it gets nuanced and it gets custom tailored very quickly if you really get into how to help guys in their actual existence live that, not just like, okay, show up, whatever. There's so many phrases like, show up or get out. I don't know what they are, but they're not coming to my mind right now. But it's like that gets us in the door. Yes, we gotta say it's time. It's like enough is enough. Enough is enough with the old thing. That thing isn't working, whatever it is. So then what's going to get us in the door is, okay, paying attention, finding your integrity and living according to it, working with what blocks you from living in integrity, which are usually addiction patterns or codependence.
Self-sabotage.
And how to work at the self-sabotage, exactly, and how to get to the roots of that so it no longer has power over your life. Then from there, it just gets more and more. You can just keep going.
Yeah. Since I've started to understand these things, I realized that all of us on earth, we have self-sabotage traits that are deeply embedded in us from our childhood. And most of the time, it is up to like the age of 10 where we have like a moment or moments that basically have defined everything about us in terms of how we see ourselves and, how our view of the world is. And then how we show up in relationships, how we show up in friendships, and how we show up in business. And, it's really, when you look at it, it seems almost like it's a big grand design that has been done to us to put us like this. So what are your thoughts then that there is a hidden hand that is basically steering humanity in a way that it shouldn't be going and is basically pulling all these strings to create all of this self-sabotage, pain, suffering, strife, and lack of mentality? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a good question. The way I see it now, again, there's layers and levels, and I don't know about like some devious, whatever Illuminati, Big Brother thing. Who knows? Probably some degree going on. There's weird forces on this planet for sure. And they've infiltrated into the mainstream through media, through movies, through books, through everything. And it's an epidemic. We're living in an epidemic. I often say, it's, the pandemic is just one new nuanced version of epidemics that have been going on. And we all have been exposed to this thing that has taken us over. I call it modern man's disease when I'm talking about men, because there's all this like deep imprinting. But the way I see it, to answer your question, is like the force that's got us living in this twisted way. Just call it a twist. Because it can get untwisted, I believe, and I've seen and I feel. So the force that I see that has us living in the twisted way on the most micro level in every single human personally and collectively is just what in spiritual circles they call the ego. Now, even that's a big thing. We could define it. There's a lot that goes into that and why it has so much power and why it co-ops our psyche and why it has us living in selfish, distorted, self-sabotaging ways that are just off center of where we really want to exist in and where we're really designed to live in. So I do feel that's the ultimate force, is just the power of the human psychology, the human psyche, and how it's just gotten out of hand because it's just fed itself through generation after generation, and people haven't known how to get to the roots of it and untwist it and heal it from the root level up. And that untwisting is the salvation possibility, I feel, for all of us as humans, again, individually and collectively, is once we know how to not just fight against the ego, because the fight against it doesn't ultimately work. It can be better. It's better than just giving into it. Like you're saying, if we just give in to these forces of selfishness, greed, lethargy, laziness, all that, that's and that is going on a lot, and to whatever degree in a lot of people's lives. Most to some degree are living in that. Now, in some cases, it's extreme. And in any of those cases, the prescription, step one is pay attention, get in integrity. Like you said, pull your socks up in the way we talked about, which means integrity, showing up, sacrifice, show up for a higher cause than just this selfish impulse that you have. That's a great step. It gets us in the door. But if you just keep that going for too long, the fight will wear you down. It ultimately won't translate into that man's life and into the people around him, his children, his partner, in a way that actually satisfies, it actually transmits this juice of love, this juice of wholeness, this juice of joy, this juice of purpose. So we need to know how to get to the roots of that egoic twist and all of its power and do the practices. I always say this is like a two-pronged approach to embodying our true wholeness as men. We aim in the direction of what we know is true and essential and accurate for us. And then we work on the barriers. We work in a really skillful, nuanced way on dissolving the power and alchemizing the roots of where that came from, which ultimately is in those childhood imprints, those wounds, those pains, those griefs, those ways that we felt abandoned, we felt abused, we felt not shown up for, we felt confused, we felt lost, all those things. And that is the real epidemic on the planet. And when we get in these group contexts and we get in the right circles, whether that's one-on-one, in groups, and with medicine, to me, like we want to do all three in combination. You get that becomes a new holding environment, a new place to start fresh and actually do the work that we wish we could have done from day one, but we just weren't able to because of our parents and our culture and our schools and all the weirdness that we were born into. We're creating a new place to blossom in, to heal in and bloom in, so that we can live in those more essentially whole ways that are based, yes, in integrity and empowerment. And I love the word badassery as men, but also heart and soul and love and care and a transmission of something that's like juicy and fulfilling and just like the most human stuff also, So that's what I'm on fire for, is that true path of all of that combined.
Basically, what you're describing for men is the Amina, according to Carl Jung. And then for women is the Aminus. So the women have to learn how to think logically, think in order and structure, because not everything is about their feelings. because women tend to communicate through their feelings. And I told a girl recently that I said, but if you realize that you tell me about how things make you feel, but not actually how things are. And she stopped and she paused. She says, yes, this is true. I said, well, okay, good. So we actually could have a base, this know that we can build on that. Because I said to her, because I understand that this is my experience. I realize that women tend to interpret things more personal and men tend to interpret things more as information. Is it fact or not? Is it black or white? And this is the logical mind here now. But women tend to interpret the information more as how it makes them feel. So they internalize it as about them. So it's actually two different skill sets where men have to learn to have a little bit of that feeling, to have the empathy, the compassion, and kindness. And then women have to have a little bit of like, okay, this is not actually being said about me. This is actually being said about what it is. And this is just information and I shouldn't take it personally. So it's actually two difficult skill sets that both sexes have to acquire. And you use the right word, it takes mastery, because even with the ego, I used to think when I first started to learn these things that you have to destroy the ego, but it's about mastering ego. It's about conquering it. It's about being able to, okay, this thing is happening, but I'm not going to let that affect my state, right? And then by not letting it affect my state, then I can make better choices. And the better choices I make, the better my life becomes. The better my life becomes, the better I think about myself. The better I think about myself, the better choices I make. And then the better my life becomes. So we create this feedback loop. So what you're talking about is sort of a bit of a feedback loop to create, which is basically one of the keys to life,
Yeah. That's what to me, this is all about, finding those keys and actually applying them over time in more and more and more masterful ways. And then our life becomes a living art. We do become living artists, like it does become like a tango dance or a martial artist or a Jedi. There's a magic that can start to come, and a flow and a beauty and a wake of love that we leave, a wake of goodness, and that's what I am truly most interested in, is that ultimate, the refiner's fire and the skills and the tools that get us in that loop, and then how to stay on that path and be supported on that path over time. So we actually get to live in that. That's a high level thing. It's rare. Even with all the teachings and books and podcasts and all the amazing things that are out there, to actually live into that in a really embodied way at the levels of like feeling it in and through your whole being, it's a rare thing on the planet.
Absolutely.
But that's the path we're on, and that's the path that I'm on myself, and I've been aspiring on this path for a long time now, and continue to. And this camaraderie system, and like we were saying, that that threefold thing of like whatever it is that you do in this catalytic way. A lot of times these days that's medicine. Used to be vision quests or retreats where it's this solo empowered kind of like, okay, I'm gonna like blast open to what's possible, like that, in combination with some one-on-one mentorship, in combination with a group field where you feel like, oh, that tribal element. That's what I think we as humans are designed to most thrive in. All of that combined becomes a path of truly, truly living this, so that, it's no longer concept. And the people around us are like, whoa, what happened to them? Why do I feel this whole different thing when I'm around that person? It's like literally palpable around a being who's done this, who's living this.
And this is what I say, that because I find that today in the truth community, you tend to find that there's a lot of emphasis on trying to change the world. But what I say is that we can't change the world, but we can change ourselves. And when we change ourselves, the world around us change, which is exactly what you said, where because when you change yourself, your energy has become completely different. So when people are in your sphere or in your presence, they feel this energy about you, this presence that's palpable, like you said, right? So then that person is going to start to react differently to you because of the energy you're exuding. And this is exactly how we change the world, but because we change the world by changing ourselves. Then when we change ourselves, our world changes. And then when our world changes, the world around us changes, right? So I think that a lot of people in the truth community, while they mean well, they're missing the nuance of how to change the world, because the world is bigger than us, but our collective energy is what changes the world. And we do that by each one of us, the 8 billion people on earth, change ourselves in order to change the collective energy on the planet. But our focus should be on the inside instead of looking at trying to change everybody else and worrying about what everybody else is doing, because the path is narrow and few find it. So we have to do it ourselves, you know?
Amen, man. I agree. And I think even if you are a change maker, even if you are doing, social activism and whatever else, if it's not coming from that harmonic, that vibration of wholeness, that vibration of presence that you were just describing, then the net result is just more of the static, more of the chaos, more of the division. So it really is a key of keys, is arrows inward, and how to really, really, really embody that, live that, be the change you want to see in the world at the deepest levels, as I say. The real thing.
So question then, because obviously it's very clear that you're very skilled in what you do. So for people listening to this, what are some of the techniques that say they were not able for whatever reason to work with you or to get mentorship for you? What are some of the high level things that you could pass to them, some little tips and hacks that they could implement in their lives today in order to start that process of working for themselves?
Good question. Yeah, that's one of the $1 million questions. So it all starts and ends, I feel, with sincerity. A more subtle kind of sincerity than most people have, than most people even on this path have, in my experience. Take some time, really, 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 right now, after listening to this, or tonight before you go to sleep, carve out some time and just go deeper than you usually do, with a kind of sincere willingness to feel, to be in your presence, to soul search, to almost do some version of a vision quest to whatever degree you can possibly do in your own life, and be an hour in a room on a cushion with a candle lit. And to whatever degree you know how to meditate, whatever degree you know how to sincerely pray in the way they teach you to do on an ayahuasca, in an ayahuasca ceremony. There's a type of prayer, and I'm not talking about the kind you learn in Catholicism or Christianity. I'm talking about get into your depths, get into your soul, and wonder on what matters most to you and what it would take to live that. Get real with yourself, get sincere. Now, from there, sky's the limit, and the recipe gets very personalized. I do feel deep embodiment practices are key, knowing how to be in your body, how to disidentify from the thinking mind, how to be present in a way that is cultivate that deep capacity to stay in the moment, whatever's going on in your emotional body, your mental body, and then to work on the nuances of that. So, again, there's different things I prescribe different people. But if I was just going to give like a general prescription, it's get more sincere than you usually get, go deeper than you usually go, and find a tool, find any and all tools that help you do that well. This is a path of heart. Ultimately, it's a path of soul. It's not a doing. You're not doing this stuff. You're embodying it. You're living into it. And it comes from your heart and soul. It comes from the marrow of your being on fire for the most real thing you can access. Like what matters the most to you. If you get clear on what that really is and you're in the depths of your being, that will translate into doing the practices that I would prescribe, like meditating more, like listening to teachers. If you're really new to this, maybe you listen to Eckhart Tolle, somebody like that. Adyashanti is a good one to start with. David Data is a good teacher for men, I feel, but you got to take all of his teachings with a grain of salt. It should come with a warning label, but this whole podcast has been that warning label. So you can now read his things and apply what you hear and read there in a way that is like reclaiming your life in the direction of that which is most true, most real, and going to matter the most in the long run.
Okay, that's good because just like you, I try to give people solutions to help them navigate the world that we're living in, because it is obvious that the world is quickly changing and is becoming more and more polarized, more and more difficult to navigate. And what is being shown to me clearly is that the time that we need to do things is now. We need to start to work on ourselves, because we are in a huge transition moment in all of known humanity. And opportunities like this literally come once in a lifetime. And we have the ability right now to transcend all of everything of this third dimension and go to a higher vibration, which is of the fifth density, where it will be all of heart, because you will have the ability to read thoughts, have telepathy, telekinesis, all these kind of godlike powers, because our DNA is going to be vibrating at a higher frequency. And the things that we have to do now is to shed those fears and traumas that you rightly spoke about, because they all come from our childhood. And bless our parents, they didn't know any better, because they were taught by their parents, who were taught by their parents, who were taught by their parents. And we just have this long line of epigenetic trauma that is playing out to now, where we have all of these mixes of DNAs from way back when that bring all their trauma, and we are the ones that are living it now and trying to navigate through the hundreds and maybe thousands of reincarnations, as well. So
it's quite a thing we're existing in and it's our, I think it's every soul's calling, really. If you go deep in the way I was just describing, you're going to find a place in you that's like, wait, there's something more real. There's something more important than the momentum of what I've been in so far.
Yes.
And even if you've already been on the path, you do this deep, sincere, soul-searching moment and you find the flame in your heart. It will inspire you, and wherever you're at. So I put out a few things for people new to the path, but if you've been on the path a long time and you use this moment of taking in what we're speaking about and speaking to as like a booster shot on your heart and soul, you'll feel that much more inspired to do what and your being is the thing that will help you stay on the path of truth, the path of healing, the path of evolution. And for almost every person I know, if they are getting the skillful means that is really going to empower that alchemy, that shift in the direction you just spoke of, it's going to be a two-sided coin of things that support you, or your own inner will and your own inner devotion to doing the things that you know are more true for you to be doing, that's half the coin. That's half the battle. The other half is focused on healing and alchemizing the wounds, the imprints, the fears, the habitual patterns of mind and emotion that just have a grip in your being on some deep level that is just like mysteriously, confoundingly, continually running the show somehow. And you apply the skillful means in that direction such that that loosens its grip on your existence so you get to live. And you put that two-step dance into play in that sincere, devoted way over time. And that's where you find people who are living in levels of mastery, levels of maturity, levels of deep embodied wisdom. And they are those transmitters of something mysterious. You can't even always put your finger on it, but you know, when you're in the presence of one of those beings, you're like, wow, I feel drawn here. I feel blessed to be here. I feel inspired to be around that being, you know, and wow, look at the wake of their existence. Look at the ripple effect. Look at the people around them, how grateful they are and how much love they feel, and how yeah, all those natural good things, you know. So that I think we're really summarizing and inspiring and putting like a nice kind of nutshell way of seeing the path. I really appreciate what we're coming to here. It's beautiful.
Yeah, because, and what I say to people is that you need to get out of your own way, because most of the time we get into our own way. And what I have learned is that if you allow life more to happen to you than you're trying to make it happen, then you start to create a little bit more magic. And when I say that, I don't mean that you don't have intentions or you don't have dreams and goals. What I am saying is that you set your intentions and you work to your intentions. However, there's a small bit of a shift that you need to focus on, which is 80% being your mindset and 20% being the doing. And when you focus 80% on your mindset, which in fitness, because I'm a fitness trainer, if you focus 80% on your nutrition, it means you will get way better results than just focusing on 80% of the training. So if you focus 80% on your mindset, you are creating an environment for you to be able to make the right choices and to allow things to happen. So your intentions are set, you're working toward those, but your mindset is where is the most important, because the mind is what is envisioning and creating and attracting to you the people, the places, the opportunities, right? And the money, whatever it is you're trying to attract, you're going, the man or the woman, right? Because of your mindset, there's something magical that happens in the etheric realm where you bring those things to you based on your mindset, because your mindset will determine the energetic frequency that you have. So once you focus on that, I think that most people will be able to start to get out of their way and to let things happen to them. And then, but the thing is now is that you have to have the element of trust. And that's trust in yourself and belief in yourself that you will be able to survive. You will be able to make it, because the fear from our childhood of X thing or Y thing that happened to us is what blocks us. So as you're saying rightly, you need to heal those wounds, those fears, those traumas, and then you will start to see magic occurring, you know?
Amen. Amen. Yeah. And again, you're speaking to that two-step dance, that two-pronged approach. Like you're saying, aim in this direction, do these things. That's the skillful means. And then we got to work on that base, that fundamental place that doesn't have the trust. Like that's one of those imprints. That's one of those hot spots of like, for most people, that's a deep thing. You can't just say, flip a switch and trust. You got to like know how to nuance, get in on that and find a connection to something that you, oh, there it is. There's that real trust is coming back. It's actually authentic. It's like flowing in my soul again, in my mind, and I actually feel it, and that's possible. So I want to like use everything we're saying as like a flare of optimism for everybody out there to be like, oh, this is doable. There are the teachings, we are blessed. That's one thing we're blessed about in this modern day and age. It's even like almost like a can of worms now that's been opened. There's so many teachings and trainings and tools and techniques and everything, but in there, the diamonds are in there. We have what we need to actually live ourselves into a new existence, one that we're really here to live. Because I do feel every person, every heart, every soul, every spirit came into this particular life that you're in right now to embody something. And that call in your heart. I mean, you might not know exactly what it's supposed to be, but you can feel like, oh, it's not just to live in this old momentum that I've lived in so far. There's some place, there's some experience that I'm here to experience and live. And it's going to take some work to exist in that. And these are those tools and teachings and medicines and all of it that help us actually do that.
I got a question for you. So in your teaching and coaching of men and women and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
In most cases, when was that moment where they were able to have that trust? Because in my situation, I want to find out now if this is similar to what you see. My situation came where I had a total breakdown of identity to the point where it got so bad that I was like, I wasn't sick and tired, but figuratively, internally, spiritually, emotionally, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I got to that moment where it was like, all right, enough. I surrendered.
Yeah. Right.
Is that similar to how you see with the people that you coach, that they have that surrender moment where it was so bad that it was just too difficult to continue, that they just say, okay, I'm afraid, but the fear is a little bit less than the pain of suffering. Is that what you see?
Yeah. That's very, very, very common for sure. There's, again, this is we're so unique and there's so many flavors of humans that it can become by in different ways, but that is one of the most common ones. It's literally just like you're saying, it's like the true surrender moment. It's like something collapses, something gives up, and that's where something else gets to come alive. And that's your spirit. That's the place that's like, it's just like, and you can't fake that. That's the thing. You can't fake or force that piece, but that is often what it takes for people, is that little like breakdown to breakthrough moment, or big breakdown to breakthrough moment. And really that rock bottom of some sort that just like catalyzes like, okay, it's a form of ego death. It's a kind of ego death because something just gives up and surrenders, but it's not like a false giving up. It's not a collapsed surrender. It's an authentic surrender, and that's why you can't fake it. But that's really like probably the bulk of people have some version of that, where it's just like, okay, that enough is enough moment. In fact, this tattoo right here is it's a calligraphy of the word enough. And it's a multi-entendre version of the word enough. But a big, big part of it was that enough is enough moment. And like, never again that way, only the new way. Because I hit my rock bottom with the old pattern. It was like that enough is enough moment is very real.
Okay. The reason why I asked that is because a lot of people that listen to my podcast and even train with me on the training side, a lot of them are struggling in terms of, getting to that point. So because you've confirmed my hypothesis, because I was basing what I say on my experience, I can say now with more certainty that it has to get more difficult. So what I would say to people is that this is going to sound mad, but embrace difficult moments.
Embrace the
them.
Difficulty,
Because it is only through embracing it that you're going to actually have the breakdown, because you need to have that authentic, pure surrender and breakdown where it's like you're almost on your knees. You're almost on your knees,
exactly,
and every fiber in your body is like, I can't do it anymore. And then that's when it happens.
Yeah, you're right. And one way to accelerate that or help that occur is pay attention in that sincere way that I was talking about before. So what I was talking about combined with what you're saying, that sincerity of self-introspection with the pain you've been experiencing recently or for however long, put those two together. That's going to accelerate this enough is enough moment. And there's one other tool that you can accelerate that enough is enough, because you can't fake it, but you can hopefully accelerate it to happen like now instead of 3 years from now. And the other way is look at your deathbed. Like get sincere about how you want to feel on your deathbed. Like really go into this. There's a teaching that one of my teachers had. It was called Memento Mori. And it was like, just remember that this life is limited. Remember you're going to die. Remember this is a one and only thing. And if you get really deep in that contemplation, it can accelerate that place inside that's like, oh my God, enough is enough. This is a one. People who have near-death experiences, when it's real, they often come out of that just, I know what I need to prioritize. I'm not, and the will is engaged. They're no longer just mushing along. They're like, I'm engaged with what's most important to my existence. And again, that's a soul level thing, because as a soul, as a spirit, as the true version of you that you are, you came into this life for something. So if you really get real about that, something will come alive in there like, oh my God, it matters. This matters. These are the things that matter. And then that activates places in your soul, in your being, that will help you actually do that. Now, again, you're going to want to also employ whatever tools you can find to get at the roots of why the mush keeps coming back. Because that mush power, that thing is powerful. The part that wants to get, self-sabotagey or wants to get lazy or wants to just say fuck it and get selfish, or the part that wants to just go on autopilot, those forces are strong. So as much as you want to catalyze this inspiration and your devotion, what in Sufism they call himma, it's this force in everybody's being. In Buddhism, they call it bodhicitta. It's like, we all have something in there that is our true spirit. So we want to activate that and work with the stuff that wants to hijack us away from that. And then all of a sudden you're just living your truest life.
Okay, awesome.
I mean, it's easier said than done, but it is doable. That's the good news. The good news is it's doable and it is good. And every single person I know who's engaged this well and employed the things we're talking about, they have felt 100%, like, wow, this actually was the pivot point of my life, night and day.
Yeah,
that's the good news.
I
lucky
agree.
Good news.
I agree with what you're saying, and I'm glad that we are wrapping up on this note where it's very positive. And what I say to people is that you can do it. You already have done it. You will do it, and it's already done. Just remember that. And
I love it.
Even though it doesn't seem like you're winning, you are winning, because one of my mentors said that you fail forward. So all of your quotation marks failures are actually life lessons that are actually building you up to make you better, stronger, faster, wiser. So look at things from a half full point of view. Look at things how they are instead of how they should be, because that was one of the things that held me back. I focused so much on how things should be instead of focusing on how things are. And when you get present to how things are, then you're able to find the solutions to those challenges. So don't give up, folks. You're talking to two guys that have had several breakdowns in their lives, several failures. Both of us have had that moment where we were sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you should embrace that in your life, and follow some of the tips that Tobin told us tonight, and to help level up your life. So that being said, Tobin, tell the people how they can find you if they want to work with you, how they can get in touch with you. What does that look like, etc., etc. Anything else that you want to plug?
Thank you, man. So yeah, basically, if you're interested in the men's work, the awakenedbrotherhood.com. Actually, it's just awakenedbrotherhood.com, and you'll see our next semester and all that stuff. You can read more about it. You can reach out to me directly. You can. My website is tobinzivon.com. You'll see all sorts of testimonials and get a little more on what I do and how I do it. But, if you're at all interested, I'm very open. I'm very up for connecting with people who are inspired to be on this path. So reach out direct. Happy to connect with you live, and we'll go from there.
Okay, awesome. And as you know, people, I'm an online fitness trainer. So I help spiritually inclined people burn fat and build muscle. And my take on it is that if you want to level up in this part of your life, you go through the body, because the body is the temple of God. And when you clean up that temple, the spirit and the source comes and dwells inside of you. And then you start to have all these changes, and the magic starts to happen. So if you would like to get into the best shape of your life, learn some of the things that me and Tobin spoke about tonight in my coaching, because he and I speak the same thing, but slightly different languages, but we're all basically pretty much on the same path. And and if the stuff that I said resonated with you, hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246, or my name Todd Cave on Facebook. Send me a message and just say, hey, Todd, want to get in shape, whatever. And if you're new to this podcast, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. And if you are on a spiritual journey, or you are now starting a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, I can help you to get some magic mushrooms. So hit me up again on my socials at Adriano_246, or my name Todd Cave on Facebook. And also, if you would like to help support this podcast, we have a merch store on Amazon with the brand Todd and Me. And I have on one of those shirts today. And this is the Todd and Me series. You can find the links to all these things, to the Amazon store, Tobin's website, his Instagram. All of these things will be in the description of this podcast. And just want to say, Tobin, thanks for coming on to the Conscious Man 7 podcast tonight. It was a really interesting chat. We have a lot more in common than we have uncommon. And we just say things in a slightly different way, but this is the thing.
Totally.
The path is the same. How we get there is irrelevant. But the thing is that we're going in the same path, which is the most important thing. So go, people, show some love to Tobin. If you want to get some help from him, hit him up on his Instagram or his website. And he doesn't only coach men, he coaches women and couples as well. So if you are a man, woman, or in a couple, he is the guy that can help you. So thanks very much all for tuning in to another podcast. We have some more interesting guests coming. Speak to you soon. Ciao and namaste.
Namaste. Thanks, Todd.